This week's episode is brought to you by Mobile UX London, Europe's most forward-thinking UX and design conference. It is on the 20th of November. It's in central London, and it's looking at how new modes of technology are forcing us to change the way that we approach design. It's covering areas such as virtual reality, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and of course, voice. Speakers include Peter Hodgson, Senior UX Design Lead at Google, Jennifer Greenway, Principal UX Researcher at Just Eat. It's going to be an immense event. You can head to mobileuxlondon.com and use the promo code VUXWorld to save 20%. Now, without further ado, let's get on with today's show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to VUX World, the Practical Voice Podcast. Today's guest is Sara Smolley. She is the co-founder and VP of Strategy for Voiceitt. Voiceitt are an absolutely immense company. It's an admirable company. What they're doing is they're working on giving people a voice who have non-standard speech, should we say. So people who might have had a stroke, they may have cerebral palsy or some other condition that affects their speech. So these people will not be able to be understood by something like Alexa or something like Google Assistant or Siri. These people will have a hard time communicating with other humans because their speech is being affected to the point where it's difficult to understand. What Voiceitt are doing with their technology is they're enabling these people, which is millions of people across the world, they're enabling them to be able to speak. It uses text-to-speech, it uses synthesized speech via an app, and once you've configured it, you can then just speak into it and it will understand what you're saying and it will speak for you. It is an immense technology that has the potential to open up voice technology to the rest of the world. There's all this stuff about voice being accessible, but this makes voice truly accessible. Today we're speaking to Sara all about Voiceitt. We're going to get into the detail about the platform and what it does. It's part of the Alexa startup program, so we're going to be talking about that as well. And Sara's going to give us a demo as well. We're going to hear Voiceitt in action, and we're going to discuss some of the challenges that exist out there in the voice space for people with non-standard speech and the importance of the mission that Voiceitt are embarking on. That's the word, embarking on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is VUX World. So, Sara Smolley, welcome to VUX World.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Yes, fantastic for you to join us. Shout out to Lily Rogers, by the way. I know she's not with us anymore, but Lily kind of introduced us and made all this stuff happen. So thank you, Lily, for making it happen.
Lily's fantastic. I heard that she's practicing her English accent as well out in London.
Oh, really?
So maybe improving, and maybe I'll learn a little bit of that too.
Nice. So welcome to the UX World. I come across Voiceitt. We were at an event that Voiceitt put together in London a few weeks back. I met Lily there, and that's the first kind of exposure I had to Voiceitt, and it sounds like an absolutely incredible platform or system. Let's tell the VUX World listeners a little bit about yourself first, Sara, and then we'll move into telling us a little bit about Voiceitt.
Sure, absolutely. And thanks again for inviting us to talk about Voiceitt. My name is Sara, and I'm one of the co-founders of Voiceitt. We are a small startup based in Tel Aviv, Israel. We're basically technologists. So besides for me, speech recognition experts, machine learning, signal processing, so sophisticated technologists. Myself, I came to Israel after spending a long time in Asia. I was in a biotech startup in Hong Kong and then in Korea for about 5 years. And that's really where I started to get into the world of technology and at the same time the world of innovation and entrepreneurship. So it sounds kind of unlikely, but I started my kind of startup journey in South Korea. And then about 3 years ago, I came over to Israel, and that's how I met the co-founders of Voiceitt, Danny Weisberg and Stas Tiomkin, who are now the CEO and CTO of our company. And I'm now managing our business development and strategic partnerships in the US and Israel, and now also throughout Europe. So we're in an exciting kind of time of transition and building our team and building our community.
Fantastic. Good place to get into technology, South Korea, I imagine. I'm pretty sure they make most of the world's hardware, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, Korea, it's definitely, very strong in the area, in technology generally. I would say, though, in the world of, in startup world, or I like to say kind of in startup land, it's relatively new in the culture and in the society, and that's was kind of what I started to learn. While I was there, is kind of seeing as the country and specifically in the Seoul metropolitan area built the infrastructure and the really a culture around. Innovation and startups. So it was a really exciting time to get into startups. And then when I came to Tel Aviv, that's, you might be familiar with, but there's a whole energy of startup culture and entrepreneurship over there. And, one of the most energetic places to be building a startup company.
Yeah, I've come across there's quite a few startups coming out of Tel Aviv. Like I've noticed that cropping up here and there. And
yeah.
Interesting work week over there, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't it? What is it? You have Friday off and you work Sunday, something like that.
Yeah, we Sunday to Thursday. So it's Friday and Saturday off. But that's sort of if you're a sort of standard work week. I think when you're an entrepreneur, there aren't those kind of boundaries. So we were pretty much around the clock, and especially because we're working in a bunch of different time zones, and a lot of times virtually. I mean, right now I'm on the East Coast in the U.S. and just coming back from the West Coast. My team is in Israel. We're working in Europe, so it's really kind of a nonstop work environment.
So you're pretty much Tel Aviv. I don't know exactly the time difference of Tel Aviv, but I know that we're kind of like something like 7 hours or 8 hours ahead of the West Coast. So Tel Aviv is probably even further ahead, perhaps. So you probably not only are working 7 days a week, but given the time scales, you're probably working 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like the time difference is definitely impact, but it's not really work when you're really focused on something that's really meaningful and just really so exciting and stimulating and potentially powerful in the project that we're working on and the team that we're building. So it's definitely requires high energy, but I wouldn't actually call it work.
That's good. They always say that if you find something you enjoy, you'll never work again. So tell us a little bit about you mentioned the thing you're working on and how it's, everyone's kind of really passionate about it. Tell everybody what Voiceitt is and what it is that you are doing over there at Voiceitt.
Yeah. So Voiceitt, we've built a speech recognition system for non-standard speakers. And our focus is people with different speech and motor challenges or disabilities. So this can include children with cerebral palsy or autism, adults with stroke, ALS, Parkinson's disease, and many other situations that for whatever underlying kind of medical condition, their speech is unintelligible to the people around them. And that means that even the most basic tasks, so something like ordering a coffee at a nearby cafe or asking for directions, or even like saying, I love you, is nearly impossible. And so what we've developed is a speech recognition technology that learns each person's unique pronunciation and then continues to learn and adapt over time. So even if the person's voice changes as a result of a degenerative disease or along with speech therapy, the machine learning mechanisms are designed to learn as the person uses it. And with that, it enables human-to-human communication, which is verbal communication, enabling the person with the unintelligible speech to speak spontaneously in the most natural and human form that there is, their own voice.
Fantastic. And you are part of the Amazon Alexa startup program, aren't you?
Yeah, we just announced, I think a few weeks ago. It's
congratulations.
It was an exciting announcement. Thanks.
Yeah. So tell us about that? What's that entail? What does that involve?
Yeah. So we're part of the Amazon Alexa Accelerator, which is powered by Techstars, which is also a prestigious startup accelerator program. And as part of this program, we're exploring opportunities with the Amazon Alexa folks in potential collaboration, and also receiving support from different teams, business and technical teams across Amazon and the Amazon Alexa specifically division, as well as the greater Seattle technology community. The program started about a month ago, and we're really overwhelmed, like with not just like with the real like sort of concrete support, and by support I also mean investment. So so as part of our participation in the accelerator, we also announced investment by the Amazon Alexa Fund. So in addition to that kind of real support, there's also really great enthusiasm and appreciation for our mission and the products that we're developing and the real impact that they can have. And getting this sort of buy-in from the technology community and the leaders in this space has been, really meaningful, and we're really looking forward to strengthening our collaboration and, our partnerships with the companies, that we're working with, and our other business and supporters within the community.
So does that mean that we might see some version of Voiceitt on the Echo or Alexa platform at some point? Is that kind of how closely you're getting, or not?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, because of the nature of our partnership and the sort of non-disclosure kinds of agreements, I can't share too much on the logistical or technical level and the sort of in the sort of collaboration that we're discussing, but what I can emphasize is that our work with the Amazon Alexa teams and also with Microsoft, their neighbor in Seattle, we also recently announced the investment by M12, which is Microsoft's venture fund. And so, we're really overwhelmed with the support and, the kind of enthusiasm that we've received, from Microsoft as well. And what I can say, although I can't really talk too much in too many specifics, is that all of these discussions are very much in line with ultimately the vision for Voiceitt, which is speech recognition that's truly accessible to everyone who really needs it the most. And that becomes increasingly important as voice-driven technologies become increasingly mainstream in our lives. It also means that many of the people who can benefit the most and actually kind of need these voice technologies the most because they have, motor control challenges or physical limitations that mean that they may need to rely on human caregiver support to, accomplish basic tasks. And voice can really solve many of these issues. But if you can't access it, then the technology is not being leveraged to its full potential. And so when we're, discussing our technology with these companies, it's really all aligned with our ultimate goal, which is to enable accessible speech recognition to enhance independence and ultimately quality of life for the people in our community.
Because it's mad, isn't it? Because accessibility is one of the things that gets kind of, all these voice assistants get a real positive spin and a lot of ticks in the boxes from an accessibility perspective, don't they? Because, for example, if you're blind, then you might struggle to use, you might need a screen reader or whatever. You might struggle to use a graphical kind of user interface or whatever. Or, for example, if you might be, elderly, not interested in the internet or whatever, but there's a load of kind of like older people that really love the sort of the smart speakers and that. So the way that this technology is kind of being branded, it's already being branded as an accessible or more accessible form of technology, but that's not strictly the case, is it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that that first of all, awareness of the gaps in accessibility in emerging technologies is definitely growing. And I always appreciate when I hear, executives at, the leading technology companies and product managers talk about accessibility as a priority. And at the same time, like there are truly amazing advances in making sure that that these technologies are, accessible. But at the same time, there's still ways to go. The particular problem that we have that we aim to address is when someone with non-standard speech is trying to access a voice technology and is effectively left out of this whole wave. But I think there's other challenges that still remain to be addressed. But I think that we've come a long way, and there's truly commitment from major players to make sure, I think, that these are addressed. And I think that's really a huge step for our society and our technology community.
Definitely. We'll come on to discussing a little bit about how Voiceitt works and stuff like that, and maybe we can do a bit of a demo of it in a second. But where did it all sort of come from? Where did the idea? Because I don't know too much about the technical detail to get it to where it is, but it's an immense challenge to even think about pursuing. People who, I don't know, maybe they've had a stroke and another human might find it difficult to understand them, yet this Voiceitt system can understand them, can allow them to speak, and it's a fantastic piece of technology. So where did it all start, and what gave Voiceitt the ambition to go and try and solve this problem?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying that it comes from a personal story, and even now, I would say that the members of our team and our business supporters kind of share sort of maybe a personal interest in this mission. And the original idea started from the experience of my co-founder and our CEO, Danny, when his grandmother had a stroke. And quite suddenly, she was unable to speak clearly and to communicate basic wants and needs. And from that personal experience, he realized that this is a challenge and this is a problem that actually touches millions. And it's, for lack of a better word, an unspoken challenge. It's not talked about. And he also realized, and so that was sort of his motivation to start a company that would facilitate verbal communication in this way.
Cool. So tell us about how it works then. So if I don't know, if I'd had a stroke, or if one of my relatives had had a stroke, or some other thing, maybe cerebral palsy or whatever, which is kind of inhibiting their ability to speak, as an average person would, in inverted commas. What does this thing look like? How does it work? Like, what would be the process to get somebody up and running with Voiceitt?
Sure. So I'll start by explaining that we're actually building two kinds of products using our underlying technology. The first product, and that's the product that I can demo for you in a moment, enables human-to-human communication. So we've built a mobile application. It can be used on any smart device. Right now, we're testing on iOS with an iPad or an iPhone, and with a really intentionally, simple and intuitive interface. The person will train the software. And then be able to, as they speak, the application will translate what they're saying in both text and voice, like synthesized speech output. So that's our first product. The second product that we're exploring in parallel is more than human to human communication, enables human to machine interaction. And that's where, software integration comes into play, where the technology enables, can enable something like a voice activated smart assistant to be accessible to someone with a speech impairment as well.
Right. So Voiceitt isn't an assistant itself. It's the engine that gives somebody who has trouble speaking a voice.
Exactly right. The our core technology is speech recognition. The question, like what you're referring to, of the intent of the person's speech is quite a different technology, and in fact, that's a major focus now in the industry, where all the major companies in this space are working on addressing the question of natural language understanding, the question of speech recognition, of the system being able to recognize the person's speech patterns. That's what we're focusing on.
And when you mentioned there that somebody who gets if they get the app and they'd have to train it or set it up, what does that entail?
Yeah. Oh, it's quite simple. The users, very often with the help of a caregiver or a speech or occupational therapist, will follow a series of prompts to record words or short phrases a couple of times. So it can take, kind of depending on the person's it will kind of vary from person to person. So you can imagine that someone with a speech impairment will sometimes, might be challenged to have a long session of recording. But generally it's between, it can be 30 minutes to a couple of hours. Then after that, they can they've created what we call a personalized dictionary or a customized speech bank, which enables them to speak aloud each of those, like words or short phrases, and then be translated, so to speak, in real time. And I can show you kind of how it works if you'd like.
Yeah.
Right now. So this is the application. So I've just opened the application. It's, as I said, really simple. If you're familiar with Siri on an iPhone, generally, basically what it looks like, a clean recognition screen. You'll see like at the bottom, there's movement. The wave at the bottom is indicating that the system recognizes that there is speech being spoken. However, it's not the it's not the voice that they that the system has learned. In other words, like I didn't calibrate the system. Now I'm going to show you, kind of introduce you to a few of our users. So I'm going to play some recordings of their voices. They're speaking in English, and first you can just, if you would kindly just listen and let me know if you're able to understand a bit of what they're saying.
So I'll listen, and what I'll do is I'll try and see whether I can guess what this person is saying, and then you can show us the Voiceitt version, and we'll see if we're right.
Okay. Yeah. So that sounds good. So I'm going to introduce you to our first kind of demo user here, and her name is Voiceitt. She's a young woman about my age, a great friend and supporter of our company. She's going to speak a few words in English, and so I'm just going to play a few recording, like a recording of her voice.
No, I can't. God, thank you for it. To have, to know my.
Okay. I think I heard thank you, but I don't know. Everybody listening, whether you're on your commute or whether you're driving or got headphones in, have a think about what you think that says. And Sarah, you can show us what the situation is.
Okay, sure. Okay, so I'm going to open the application. And so back to the main screen there. And start. Whoops. Okay, wait, I'll open the application. And again, like it should translate. You'll be able to hear the synthesized speech output, but there'll also be like a text on the screen as well.
Now I can.
Now I can.
God,
Start.
thank you for it.
Speaking freely.
To have,
To have.
to know my.
A normal life.
Wow. That's fantastic.
So actually, the first example is we actually consider it to be more of a mild mild impairment. So I'm going to show you another example that is somewhat more unintelligible, sort of on the spectrum of what we call clinically dysarthria or speech impairment. The second individual is an older gentleman with multiple sclerosis, and here is his voice.
Very good. And then, Bravo.
And using Voiceitt.
Very good.
Raindrops.
And then,
In the air. Form.
Bravo.
Rainbow.
That is fantastic. So, would they need to essentially configure the system to understand when the person is saying those words, or will it will you have to train it for some words and then it recognizes and it'll just pick up new words after that? Do you need to train it for everything, or does it learn?
That's a really good question. We've kind of developed two products. In the first stage of the the first version of the technology that we've developed and we're testing now is designed to recognize what has been pre-calibrated. So that means that the person is prompted to record, words or, short phrases, and then they can say and have translated those words or phrases that have been that have already been calibrated to the system. So this also means that it's completely customized to the speaker without any assumptions about their underlying phonology or capability of producing sounds. You can kind of think of it as a totally new language. And for this reason, it also means that our technology is in this version is language independent. So that's why we're able to test it in Hebrew in Israel and in English here in the US. And we're now testing throughout Europe. We are funded by the European Commission Horizon 2020 program. So that's supporting our testing and commercialization in Europe. So we're testing now in British English and Italian, Spanish, and soon Italian as well. But of course, the accompanying limitation is that it's only designed to recognize what has been pre-calibrated. In a version that we are currently in, like a research and development stage, will enable more continuous speech so that after a short calibration phase, the system should then be able to extrapolate to any word in the person's given language. And this will enable, a sort of continuous or spontaneous free speech as well.
Wow, that's fantastic, that, isn't it? That's so. Presumably, then, if it can work in different languages and it's not language specific, is it kind of, as opposed to translating the words as like a text to speech thing would do, is it kind of like matching a sound with words that you give it? Is that kind of how it works? Is it kind of like recognizes the shape of a sound and then it will attach a word to that sound, or is it a kind of speech recognition engine that's in there?
Yeah, I mean it's a combination of sort of state of the art speech recognition technologies and and it's completely proprietary. So it's what we've and our technologists have developed. There is an element of kind of advanced pattern matching as well. And different speech recognition techniques also.
Wow. And how do you kind of how did you? I'm assuming you must have had quite a lot of user involvement in this. And it sounds like something that all voice stuff needs a huge amount of testing anyway. But for this in particular, it sounds as though you would have had to test this to within an inch of its life. So how did you approach the creation of something, and how did you find people to test with it? And what was all of that sort of situation like when you were building it? How did you find people, and how did you approach testing it?
Yeah, so truly the reason that we've been able to get really this far is the real engagement of our community. And these are people really all over the world who might have a speech impairment themselves. It might be a family member, a caregiver, a medical or therapy professional, with clients, with different kinds of impairments or a disability. And with their engagement, we started by collecting large amounts of data from people from around the world. And from there, we recently started a closed beta. So a beta testing program that we are now implementing with institutional partners, again, in Israel and Europe and in the US. And these are hospitals, schools, care centers, research universities, disabilities organizations that that are now supporting us in the testing and in obtaining really valuable user feedback and input for our technical teams. And it's really from the support of these institutions and their leadership, from both the administrative level and from the therapists, and really from all of the people involved that interact also daily with our potential users and our current testers. That's how we've been able to get this far. And I know that going forward, this continual engagement and, kind of this community that is similarly, excited about our mission. This is what will ultimately let us come to the success that we envision.
I think it's no surprise that you found so much support. I think because when I first come across Voiceitt, I thought that it was in some way, shape, or form linked to or related to kind of like voice assistants in some way. I thought my initial kind of thought process was that Voiceitt is itself some kind of assistant, and what it does is it will understand people who have non-standard speech, and then it will go and do something. So similar to how Alexa, you would ask it something and then it will go and do something, or Siri, you would ask it something and it return something. I kind of thought that it was that, but actually it's far bigger than that, because it's not just ask something to do something, they'll do it. It's actually giving people who don't have a voice, that's massive, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you said it, you said it perfectly. It's giving people with speech disabilities their voices back. And that's ultimately our mission. However, it also means more broadly, eventually, yes, to be integrated into smart assistants to allow access to this community.
And I mean, whether we'll see what comes out of the Alexa startup program and stuff like that, but will there be, do you see further down the line a way of either licensing Voiceitt or allowing kind of like third parties to use it to kind of improve that? Because I know that we've got Alexa and Google Assistant and all that sort of stuff, but those are just the voice assistants. The voice as an interface to technology is much bigger than those. So can you envisage a way of kind of either licensing Voiceitt out, or a way of kind of extending it beyond those assistants?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, the whole industry or this whole really growing world of voice-driven technologies is very new. I think it's very fair to say that the year 2017 was a voice revolution, where suddenly the smart assistant or the personal assistant is a household name, and that also means that it really just leave it up to the imagination of how voice technology is going to impact our lives. Already, there's voice activation in our vehicles. There's the whole context of the smart home that's voice activated. And I think we really just seen the tip of the iceberg, where, in the direction that voice is taking us. And that means that for our company, there's a whole variety of ways that we can contribute to the space and add value to customers that also want to take advantage of the great benefits of speech technologies.
And where is I know that you mentioned there you've kind of been working with Amazon and stuff like that, but where do you see the future for Voiceitt and for voice technology from an accessibility perspective? Where do you see the Voiceitt journey going?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, we are committed to we're committed to our community in making sure that our technology and the products that we developed are accessible to those who need it, that we're addressing the problem that we've identified, that we're working along with our users and all the other stakeholders in this space to really help to solve real problems in a practical way using our technology tool. So that's our first and foremost goal. And then at the same time, we're already we're in discussions with various companies in the speech space to see what it would be like to collaborate and enable accessibility of different kinds of products. And ultimately our goal is to have the greatest impact and to be able to provide a technology that adds true value and can potentially transform many lives for the better. And then expanding beyond that, like we get a lot of questions very often if our technology can expand to really like non-standard speech, like even more generally, such as accented speakers. And that's, those are broader areas that we do intend to explore for sure. And that's, all in line with our general vision, which is, accessible speech recognition.
Yeah, because I have come across recently of some examples saying that Alexa and Google Assistant and Siri has problems with accents, and I've got a fairly strong-ish accent, and I thought that I'd never really had a problem with it until the other day. I can't remember what I was trying to do, and I was trying to ask Siri something. I mentioned before, didn't I, that I've been persevering with Siri. I know a lot of people have fell out of love with it, but I've been persevering with it because I'm determined for it to work. And I was asking it something, I can't remember what it was now, but it just, for the life of it, would not understand me. So that's an interesting area to kind of be branching into, is because that's it. From a technical perspective, an accent isn't too far removed from somebody who's, for example, had a stroke. Because if the system can't understand it, then it's a noise, isn't it? It's not a word; it's just a noise. So it's an interesting area. Have you started any work on accents just yet, or is that kind of like just a visionary sort of thing?
I can't quite say, except that it's definitely an area that can be applicable and that we can explore. But you're absolutely right. There's some quotes, that it's can up to 4 to even 10% of the population can't access standard speech recognition systems. And you can think, besides for the accented speakers with British accents, there's think of in China, where Chinese is not one language. It's I think dozens of languages and dialects. I remember when we spoke with Baidu, of course, which is a major Chinese company, and of course, the companies in Asia are also very involved in speech, but many of their systems aren't working for a huge percentage of Chinese speakers, because it's essentially like the dialects can make it completely different language. So that's definitely a very relevant and increasingly relevant topic. But I think even sort of closer to home, we're also living in a world, both in the US and in Europe, of aging communities. And a large percentage of people like above age 65, for example, their voice is considered non-standard, not necessarily because of a disease or a disorder that they have, but simply because of age-related changes in their bodies and the way they produce sounds. And that means that even though they might be intelligible to the people around them, their smart assistants and standard speech recognition does not understand. And this is a quite higher percentage than you would think. And so that means that there is relevance for us in the category or demographic of aging adults as well. And that's, an important demographic that we intend to explore. Also,
I read quite a lot of about kind of like the older generation really getting on with voice assistants and stuff like that. It's fantastic. I've told the story a few times, but my nana hates technology, and she just won't have the internet. She doesn't want to know. She wouldn't even get a DVD player. And she was visiting, and we had an echo in the front room and an echo in the bedroom upstairs, and I dropped in on the upstairs and asked my mum if she wanted a cup of tea, and then she said yes, and then we kind of stopped it and stuff. And my nana was like, what's all that, what's this about? And then I started showing her and played some music and stuff. Oh no thanks, I don't want technology, I don't want to know about it. And then about an hour and a half later, we were in the dining room and I heard some music coming out the front room, and I walked into the front room and my nana's shouting at Alexa, play some Gordon Lightfoot, and she's just tapping her foot away. So it seems to be having a really big impact on the older generation, doesn't it?
Completely. And there's the also the demand from this generation as well, that they want to access these technologies.
It's kind of removes the I think that phones are perceived as a barrier anyway, aren't they, to some people? I think, especially to people who didn't grow up with the internet. If someone found out that the internet existed when they were 65, then not everybody is going to just embrace it at 65 either. My nana's 80, so she was probably 60 to 65 when she first found out about the internet. And if you haven't got on board at this point, you probably never will do. For some people. So technology in general, I think, is a barrier to quite a lot of people. But when you can just speak at something, all those barriers are removed, apart from obviously if the thing doesn't understand you, but that's where Voiceitt are kind of filling that gap. So how could people, if somebody wanted to try Voiceitt, or if someone has either a relative or themselves listening to this and want to kind of give it a go, or think it might be useful for a family member or whatever, how would they go about getting up and running with Voiceitt? What's the process? Where do they get it from? Is there a cost and all that sort of stuff? How do people start using it?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're currently running a closed beta program. So we're testing only through our partner institutions at this point. However, we would always welcome people to reach out to us and tell us about their story and how they like to use our technology when it's available. And we can make sure that they're among the first to know when our product is officially available to the public.
Fantastic. And for people who are involved in this kind of voice space, which is the vast majority, if not all, of our listenership, how can they keep track of what's going on? This is obviously something that is going to continue. Voiceitt and the work that you're doing is something that is inevitably going to continue to provide immense value. And I can only see a world where the work that you're doing opens up this technology to a far, far greater number of people than ever would have had access to it before. And that then has impacts for everybody else working in this space, who can then all of a sudden make their stuff far more accessible. How can people within the industry follow what Voiceitt are up to and keep on top of the progress that you're making?
Yeah. Well, I would welcome whoever is interested to reach out to me personally or to our team through our website. You can follow us online on Facebook as well. And, if we do read the emails that we receive from our community and definitely from your listeners. So feel free to send an email. I'm Sarah@voiceitt.com, voiceitt.com. I'm Sarah without an H. So feel free to reach out.
Fantastic. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Any closing thoughts, anything we didn't cover that you wanted to emphasize before we wrap up?
Well, again, we're a company with a mission, and we welcome the support and the involvement and engagement of like-minded individuals who share our commitment, who share our vision and our commitment. And there are really a lot of ways that we would love to engage interested individuals. So again, really feel free to reach out, and we'd love to talk to you. Fantastic.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. That was really fun. Thanks a lot.
That was Sara Smolley of Voiceitt. What a technology that is. I can really see a world where Voiceitt is used on every single voice user interface in existence. It's far bigger than Alexa, far bigger than Google Assistant and Siri and Cortana. Anything that you can speak to, any form of technology that you can speak to, which will be increasing immeasurably over the next few years. We're going to be able to speak to everything, as we've already kind of professed on the podcast. Anything you can speak to, imagine that no matter what your situation is, whether you've had a stroke, whether you have some kind of speech impediment, anybody that has non-standard speech, imagine not only being able to speak to technology and have that do stuff for you, but being able to speak to other humans and be understood, giving people who don't have a voice their voice back. Absolutely immense project that they're working on there. Can't wait for it to come out of beta. Can't wait for you all to get your hands on it. Thank you, Sarah, so much for joining us, and thanks for doing us the demo there. I'm wishing you the best of luck with such an important task. And I really do hope that Amazon and Microsoft, who've already invested in Voiceitt, I really do hope that they take this right into the core of their platforms, because I think that will make this technology far better. But even if not, being able to give a voice to people that don't have a voice is still such a powerful thing to be able to do. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, see you later.